Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955. He was given up for adoption at birth, but was later adopted by Clara and Paul Jobs. As a boy, he took apart and reconstructed electronics, a hobby which sparked his passion for mechanics. After high school, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Oregon, but dropped out after only 6 months, spending the next 18 months dropping in on creative classes. Jobs later recounted how one course in calligraphy
Because I had
developed
dropped
his
out
love
and
of
didn't have to take the
typography.
normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating.
When Jobs was just 21, he and Wozniak started Apple Computers that began in the Jobs family garage and funded themselves by selling their personal possessions. In 1985, Jobs was fired as Apple's CEO and began a new hardware and software company called Next Incorporated. The following year, Jobs purchased an animation company, which later became Pixar Animation Studios.
Apple eventually bought Next Inc. in 1997 for $429 million. That same year, Jobs returned to his post as Apple's CEO. In 2003, Jobs discovered that he had a rare but operable form of pancreatic cancer, and in 2004, he had a successful surgery that removed the tumor. On October 5, 2011, Apple Inc. announced that 56-year-old Steve Jobs had died of respiratory arrest related to his tumor.
Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement address is a famous speech because of how relatable he is to the common man, as well as his well-known technological contributions to the world. In his speech, one of the main topics he addresses includes death, which is a universal theme that everyone can relate to. Jobs also shares his own knowledge and details about his personal life, which show authority and his honesty towards the public. By the use of colloquialism and humor in Jobs' speech, it allows him to further entice and relax
On
his
that single
audience.
course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them.
Being so personal and relatable to his audience, he informs them on how he has moved on from the past because everything happens for a reason. In other words, live life to the fullest.
Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the
It
difference.
started before Steve was born. His biological mother was an unwed college graduate student, and she decided to put him up for adoption. She wanted Steve to go to college and only allowed him to be adopted by an uneducated couple after they had promised to put him through college. Their promise was true, but was consuming all of their savings. Steve didn't see the point in continuing college when it was ruining their lives. He dropped out and instead chose to drop in on the classes he found interesting, such as calligraphy. His taking of a calligraphy class led to the first beautiful personal computer with varying typefaces.
In this section, he talks about how your future job should be something you like to do and not something you'll end up hating. Next, Jobs talks about loss. He tells about how he got fired from his own company, and this shows how life can change in an instant. Next, he talks about how you have to see the value in a bad situation. For him, it was a fresh start. Steve Jobs then tells how you should never give up. When he was kicked out of Apple, he started a company named Next and another company named Pixar, which later became to be the most successful animation studio in the world. He then continues to explain how you should never settle for less.
My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right."
That quote had made an impression on Jobs, and since then he has looked into the mirror every morning and asked himself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? When the answer was no, he knew he needed to change something. Steve Jobs uses the reminder that he will die soon as a very important tool in order to make any big choices in his life. He says, there is no reason not to follow your heart. Around 2004, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with cancer. He had a tumor in his pancreas, and the doctor said that they were almost certain that this type of cancer was incurable. He was told that he should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months, and to say his goodbyes, until
I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctors started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and thankfully, I'm fine now.
nearly facing death, he realized the concept that no one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. He describes death as the single best invention of life. It clears out the old to make way for the new. His advice is that time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life.
Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much.
On January 24th, 1984, Steve Jobs released the first Macintosh, the first computer with beautiful typography. With just a calligraphy class, Steve Jobs changed the entire typography for computers. He not only changed computers but phones as well. With the release of the Apple iPhone on June 29, 2007, Jobs created a new generation of modern phones. With the launch of iTunes in 1998, he transformed the music industry. Initially starting as a simple music player, over time, iTunes developed into a complex multimedia content manager by changing the way music is searched, organized, and bought. The movie industry was also transformed with the rise of Pixar in 1986 by Steve Jobs. Pixar created the first animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world.
A Sister's Eulogy. Death didn't happen to Steve. He achieved it. My whole life I'd been waiting for a man to love, who would love me. When I was 25, I met that man, and he was my brother. He was willing to be misunderstood. He believed that love happened all the time, everywhere. In that most important way, Steve was never ironic, never cynical, never pessimistic. Yet what amazed me and what I learned from his illness was how much was still left after so much had been taken away. We all, in the end, die in medias res, in the middle of a story, of many stories. Steve's final words were, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow."